What is information? Is it the ones and zeros in a computer language? Is it the messages sent by our pets to inform us that they're hungry or they need our affection? Is it the messages of a man staring to nothing in particular in a restaurant? Hi, I'm Rachel T. Baraques, and in this video we will talk about the cybernetic tradition and how it conceptualizes communication as information processing. Here is how this video will flow. Let's begin. The cybernetic tradition looks at complex systems where parts that interact with each other have an effect on each other. Now, it means that it also looks at communication as the processing of information. Theories under this tradition explain how things work on a physical, biological, social, and even behavioral level. At its heart is a system, which is a group of parts that work together to make something bigger than the sum of its parts. In 1948, Norbert Wiener wrote a book called Cybernetics, or Control and Communication in the Animal and the Machine. This is where the word cybernetics came from. In this case, the term refers to processes that is self-regulating. Based on the excerpt from the book of Paul Watzlawick, Janet Helmick-Boven, and Don Jackson called Pragmatics of Human Communication, a study of interactional patterns, pathologies, and paradoxes, communication cannot be understood by a simple model of action and reaction, no matter how complexly it is put. Communication, therefore, must be understood at a transactional level in order to be understood as a system. As such, it follows the following communicational axioms that have interpersonal implications. Number one, that one cannot not communicate. Second is that every communication has a content and relationship aspect such that the latter classifies the former and is therefore a meta-communication. Third is that the nature of relationship is contingent upon the punctuation of the communicational consequences between the communicants, sender or the receiver. Fourth is that human beings communicate both digitally and analogically. Here, digital language has a very complex and powerful logical syntax. However, it does not have sufficient semantics in the field of relationship. On the other hand, analogic language has sufficient semantics, but no sufficient logical syntax to clearly define the nature of relationship. And lastly, all communicational interchanges are either symmetrical or complementary, depending on whether they are based on equality or difference. What we mean here is that in symmetrical interaction, partners tend to mirror each other's behavior. Thus, their action or interaction can be termed as symmetrical. It is characterized by equality and minimization of difference. On the other hand, complementary interaction is when one person's behavior complements the other's, making a different kind of behavioral alliance. An example of this would be a mother and her baby, a doctor and the patient, a teacher and student. Watzlawick and his team say that these axioms can also be seen in the same way as computer axioms. Cybernetics say that difference between mind and matter is just a functional one, just like the difference between software and hardware. The goal of the cybernetic tradition, therefore, is to explain how and why complex systems of all sizes and types, living and non-living, often fail to work. In this tradition, noise or too much information, or a bug or other flaw in the system can stop the flow of information. It shows the problems with controlling technology, the strange complexity, and even the unpredictability of feedback mechanisms, as well as the fact that even when we try to communicate well, our actions will have effects that we didn't plan for. Now, even though this tradition has its roots in technological functionalists, it says that the whole is more important than the sum of its parts. Because of this, it's important to look at communication from a bigger, systemic perspective and not hold individuals responsible for systemic results that they don't have much control over. The cybernetic tradition makes sense when we try to explain how the mind and the brain are the same thing, how knowledge and logic are important, and how complex systems can be hard to predict. This tradition questions the idea that humans and machines are fundamentally different, as well as the ideas that emotions are illogical and that there is a clear link between cause and effect. Here, ideas like systems, processing, information, messages, senders, receivers, probability, entropy, self-organization, autopoiesis, or the ability of an entity to reproduce itself, and feedback are looked at. In this tradition, there is also a lot of talk about math and computation, something we're not all fond of. Compared to Craig's other communication traditions, cybernetics and rhetoric have something in common, in that they both reduce human agency to underlying or overarching symbol processing systems. However, while rhetoric sees communication as artful discourse that helps people make practical decisions, cybernetics sees it as just a mechanism that does certain things. In the same way, it's similar to semiotics in that it focuses on how meaning emerges from the interactions between different parts of a system. However, it's also different from semiotics because it reduces the meaning of a message to its function, which is to clear up confusion. And the cybernetic tradition, like semiotics, says that you can never really know if someone is being honest or not. This is different from the phenomenological tradition because the latter says that sincerity is necessary for true communication. For this tradition, there are better ways to figure out if information is true than to figure out if someone is honest. To sum up, compared to other traditions, cybernetics encourages a practical way of thinking that understands the complexity of communication problems and questions many of the beliefs that we have about the differences between human and non-human information processing systems. To give an example of a theory under the cybernetic tradition, let us discuss the actor network theory. Now, the actor network theory is a social theory that came out of the field of science and technology. It was developed by scientists Michael Callan, John Law, and Bruno Latour in 1986 and 1987 respectively. Initially, the theory looked at how people tried to figure out not only what scientists do, but also what non-human things do for science. A and T, or ANT, shows how networks of human and non-human actors are built over time to support claims to specialized knowledge. They do this by using accounting data and reports to try to convince and persuade others. Since then, this idea has been used in a number of different social science fields. In the field of communication, organizational communication scholars like James Taylor and his group used ANT or ANT when they saw an organization as the result of its communication activities and not as the place where it came from. Taylor and his group looked into how different parts of an organization, like managers, processes, computers, machines, architectural features, ideas, policies, and attitudes communicate with each other. ANT adheres to ontological relativism. That's according to Lee and Hazard in 1999. This means that in this theory, the empirical would not be a passive collection of raw materials waiting in silence for the gift of intelligibility, shape, and voice from the researcher. Society here is not seen as a framework or as having its own realm and characteristics. It is based on the following assumptions. First, that organizations are seen as groups of different people who work together in networks and are more or less stable. Second, that the whole network will stop working if any actor, no matter where it is in the network, leaves or joins it. And third, that society is made up of relationships between people or actors who are defined in their place in the network and their connections to other people. Here's a table summarizing some of the key concepts of ANT. A study by Manalo et al. In 2014 entitled Young Allies of Agricultural Extension, the Infomediary Campaign in Aurora, Philippines, is a good example of an actual development communication study that used the actor network theory. The research looked at how young people can be involved in agriculture. It did so by looking at how the Sagot Ko, Ang Magulang Ko, isang kampanya upang hikayatin ang mga kabataang maging infomediaries project, was carried out in 2 schools in Aurora Province. ANT and the capability approach were used to analyze and place the campaign in the right context. In this case, ANT was used in the study to come up with a strategy for getting young people interested in agriculture. It was based on ANT's idea that relations or circumstances are transient and will undergo processes of remaking. The researchers were able to learn more about the campaign they were studying with the help of ANT. Through ANT or ANT, the researchers were able to point out some social and technological breakthroughs. They were also able to draw attention to organizational hurdles and suggest ways to overcome them. The theory's assumptions could also predict possible futures that were mostly favorable to the individuals who took part in the study. As a cybernetic tradition often leads to a more complete way of thinking about communication, it can be used in development communication to evaluate projects or programs like the study shown above. Wrapping up, in this video we learned about what the cybernetic tradition is. We've given an example of the theory under the tradition through the actor network theory, and has provided an actual DevCom study which used the actor network theory as its backbone. Thank you very much for your attention.